Excellent. Thanks, Luke. Hi, everyone. Great to see you all here. Thanks for coming along. I have a couple of exciting announcements to make ahead of going into the questions. A couple of long-awaited announcements on two projects we've been working on. The first one being MiniFarm, which is our LP staking, and the second one being MiniSwap. The MiniFarm LP staking, we are planning to launch next Monday. To give you a quick explanation for those who are new to things, who want to just sort of hear what it's about. MiniFarm is our yield farming protocol, and we will pay extra rewards to all users that are providing liquidity in Uniswap version 3 for the wMinima USDT liquidity pool. So all liquidity providers in the pool will be able to stake their LP NFT in a MiniFarm, and each additional reward, and they will then earn additional rewards on top of those earned in the Uniswap fees. So what we're going to be doing is setting a fixed amount of wMinima to be distributed to MiniFarm stakers on a pro rata basis over a fixed period. This initial period will be run for 90 days. During which time we'll distribute 500,000 wMinima, and the rewards will be calculated and paid out with each Ethereum block. And the amount of wMinima any user will receive will be directly proportional to their share of the staking pool. What we've tried to do is take this opportunity to make it as rewarding as possible in order to build a deep and liquid Uniswap LP trading pool, which obviously should benefit everyone in the ecosystem. And depending on the success of the initial interest in the program, we'll continue the farm beyond the 90 days with adjusted yields. So we're very, very happy to be able to announce that. I know a lot of you have been waiting for that. So again, that will create a lot of it'll create a lot of demand, hopefully, for wMinima, but also sort of help reduce the sell pressure there as well. And that will be launching on Monday. In terms of the MiniSwap, this is be launching the following Monday. This is a MiniDapp, a decentralized application that will allow users to swap assets peer-to-peer between the Minima and the Ethereum blockchains. There are no third parties involved, only a smart contract that enables you to swap native Minima tokens for ETH or ERC20s, USDT and USDC, and wMinima as well, and vice versa. And this is called a hash time-locked contract. So users will find counterparties outside of the MiniDApp and agree on the rate they would like to exchange it at. And then the native Minima seller will lock up their native Minima on the Minima blockchain, including the buyer's public key in the transaction. And once locked, the native Minima seller will share the receipt with the ERC20 seller, and the ERC20 seller will then lock up their ERC20 tokens on the Ethereum blockchain, including the receipt that they've received. And then once both have received their locked coins, then the ERC20 seller will share their receipt with the native Minima seller, and the native seller collects the ERC20 tokens, at which point the native Minima buyer can collect the native Minima. So that's all quite complicated, but as I say, it's all explained within the MiniDApp. And again, it's exciting to be able to bring the Minima and the Ethereum ecosystems closer together to allow liquidity there. So those will be, launched Monday for MiniFarm and following Monday for MiniSwap. So I'm very pleased to be able to announce those things. The third announcement I want to make is something that is completely new. As you know, automotive is a big area of growth for us. And so we are very pleased to be announcing that we're going to be doing a partnership with a motorsports team aligned with a strong automotive brand that we will all know, on an NFT drop that will provide two NFTs to buyers, one EVM and one native Minima NFT. What we'll be using these NFTs to provide fractional ownership of the team itself. And each NFT will convey different utility and opportunities to the holder. These can include discounts, chance to attend motorsports events, real once-in-a-lifetime experiences. And on the Minima side as well, then these NFTs will also provide a boost to the maximize yields. So it's it's a very exciting project that we've been working on in the background, and we will be announcing that next Tuesday. And again, it will open us up to new partners and new ecosystems, and at the same time it will really be sort of driving forward our automotive strengths. So we have sort of NFT sort of marketing and fractional ownership on one end of the spectrum, right through down to the infrastructure play that we have with our EV charging and our secure messaging within the vehicles itself. So it felt like a really suitable and good project to be working on, and we hope it'll be a lot of fun as well. So that'll be announced next Tuesday. So that's something we've been working in the background, but again, more news on that next Tuesday.
Good description of the HTLC there, Hugsy. Just to explain that whole process is transparent to you, the user, and you can do it in about 2 or 3 minutes. So it's click, click, copy, paste, click, click. That's all you have to do. But it does all of that stuff in the background. So yeah, very exciting. I look forward to getting that. What I'm also looking forward to is, either us or somebody in the community knocking up some kind of order book, because where are people going to find other people to do these trades with? That could be a Discord room, it could be a Telegram room, it could be WhatsApp, it could be websites, whatever. Could be a MiniDapp. I'd love to see that. But what it needs now, this base sort of component, is an order book. For people to say, this is what I want to buy at, this is what I want to sell at, and then that'll put people together, and then they can do that. So that's something we can add on top of that functionality, and I'm very looking forward to seeing that play out. As for MiniFarm, that's going to be interesting. I honestly don't know how that's going to play out. You guys are going to be able to stake your LP tokens and blah, 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 and all that sort of self-circular sort of stuff. And I'm very curious to see how that will affect the overall liquidity and depth of the Uniswap pool. So good luck with that. There's a good amount of wMinima in there, and you can earn that just by staking stuff. So I think that should be quite enticing. I was going to have a little rant about something. Can I have five minutes, Luke? Is that all right? 5-10 minutes?
Yeah.
I'll try to. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to talk about the current ordinal BRC20 and everything that's going on Bitcoin and the high fees and all of that, because that actually is very interesting because it applies to all of us. And so what happened, as just a recap, I'm sure many of you know, but like a month ago, 6 weeks ago, something, a dev came up with this way of doing NFTs on Bitcoin, and he called them ordinals. This was enabled, funnily enough, by a change that they made when they enabled Taproot, and they removed a limit on the amount of data that you could store and a blah, blah, blah. And so that has been possible for about 2 years now, 2 or 3 years. And it's really interesting because you don't know the consequences of the changes you make. It's impossible, and objectively, because these are the smartest coders in the industry. These are the hardcore Bitcoin core devs, et cetera, and they didn't predict this. And it took 3 years for someone to figure out that you could actually do this. So then he said, look, this is how you can put NFTs on Bitcoin. Everybody goes mad. Yeah, everybody gets very upset, because now what you've got is people using the pure, clean Bitcoin transactional money financial chain for storing monkey JPEGs. And the reason that it was so upsetting for them is because they were bloating the chain. And what I mean by that is that suddenly the Bitcoin blocks were full. Suddenly all the segregated witness data was full. Suddenly a chain that was only growing at 144 megabytes, let's say 200 megabytes a day, is now growing by 400 megabytes a day. And there's a sort of puritanical vision where it's like, well, look, these aren't financial transactions. This is just arbitrary data that you're storing on the chain. And in my opinion, if the protocol allows it, the protocol allows it. You don't get to choose what people use your decentralized protocol for. You couldn't have done this before Taproot, and they wanted Taproot, so they did it. And then 3 years later, somebody figured out that you could do this. But that was what was, that's what annoyed them. And I think it's especially, interesting to note that there are companies out there who are trying to push Bitcoin adoption. There are companies like Blockstream, other big players who have spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to get people to use Liquid, trying to get people to use their own side chains, trying to get people involved in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And it actually took one dev and maybe 200 or 300 lines of code to completely upturn the ecosystem and to come up with this, very, very new and novel thing that you can do. So again, you just don't know where these things are going to be coming from. You can't predict these things in advance. Anyway, so now you've got NFTs on Bitcoin. Everyone's like, right. And in reference to Minima, why I found that bit interesting is that on Minima, that's not an issue, because on Minima, I don't store your NFTs. Yeah, if you have an NFT and it takes up, if you have arbitrary data that you want to store in a coin in the state variables, you're the one that stores that. That's the beauty of the MMR. We're using a proof database. You prove to me that you have it. So on Minima, this wouldn't be an issue. You can store whatever you want on the Minima chain because you're the one that's going to have to look after it, not me. You just have to prove it to me when you want to then send it on to somebody else. So that was the first. That's pretty interesting. And now somebody's come along with these BRC20 tokens. And they're a sort of hybrid of the ordinals and inscriptions and blah, 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 blah. And it's trying to be a play on the ERC20. They're nothing like ERC20s, frankly. They're a very clunky sort of token. But again, massive success. Yeah, this is like, everybody's using them. They've now what we're seeing is that there's actual serious competition to get onto the Bitcoin chain. If anybody's been, observing this, we're talking 20 or 30 bucks a transaction. 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, you could have done it for 50p. Now you're going to have to pay 20 or 30 bucks. So they had the ordinals, then they put on the BRC20s. Again, just some lone coder comes up with this format, pushes it out, boom, everybody goes crazy for it. And that was interesting. And that's interesting to me for two reasons. One, this idea of tokenization, the power of wrapping something up in a digital asset and being able to use it on a blockchain is clearly something people want. It's clearly something that makes people just, they find uses, their own uses, whether or not you agree with those uses, whether you think it's a good use of their money. They're having to pay a lot for this. Yeah, a BRC20 or an NFT takes up 100 times more data than a normal transactions, and they're prepared to pay that. So, tokenization is clearly something that is, a killer feature of these chains. And in fact, you could say that is Ethereum's killer feature. And BRC20s are not as powerful as that. But, it's a start. Who knows what could be done in the future. But these tokens are something that people want. And again, with reference to Minima, we have a very clean, simple, native token solution on Minima. You can make tokens on Minima without having to do the funky things that they're having to do to get the BRC20 tokens. You can integrate those tokens into smart contracts. A smart contract on Minima knows about the tokens that are involved in the transaction. It's a very powerful system. A token transaction can do everything that a Minima transaction can do, and you can use both of them at the same time in the same transaction. So again, I'm sort of happy about that. I'm like, wow, okay, we've been validated, we've been vindicated with our use of the MMR for being able to store our own data, with our use of tokenization, because everybody seems to want that. And the third point is that now fees are high. Yeah. And I think this is also very important and very interesting, because there seems to be this notion that it's cheap. It should be cheap to run your chain. Yeah, you should be able to send transactions for very little. And this is absolutely not the case. Yeah, decentralization, censorship resistance, these things are expensive. Frankly, the misnomer, the weird time was when it was cheap. When Bitcoin transactions were 50p, that was strange. Now that Bitcoin transactions are back to where they should be, when they're 20 or 30 bucks a pop, now that makes sense. Now I can see how that is actually going to filter spam. Now I can see how that is actually paying for something. How that censorship resistance, that is what you're paying for with those fees. And there's nothing you can do about that. This is a function of congestion. This is a function of transactions per second that go through the chain. And if people are prepared to pay more than you to put their data on the chain, then that is what is going to happen, because they are paying more. And this is the same on Minima. We don't pay a miner. that you do a burn, and if you're prepared to burn more to ensure that your NFT or your token gets distributed before somebody who's not paying a burn. I mean, this only applies when your chain is full, and we are not near that, so that's not a problem for us at the moment. But it is definitely something that all chains have to face, and there's no fix to this. It's not like now they're all screaming for bigger blocks, and it's like, yeah, but then you're sacrificing decentralization. Yeah, what needs to happen is you need to realize that layer one is expensive. Layer one is not where you want to be doing this. Is it worth putting this data on layer one? Yeah, shouldn't you be doing this on higher layers? Shouldn't you be doing this on side chains? Shouldn't you be doing this on, on a different format? Does it need to be on the Bitcoin blockchain? And if it does, and if you say to yourself, no, I'm prepared to pay $50 or $150 or $500 to get my 4 megabyte JPEG into this Bitcoin block, then so be it. That is your choice. And I absolutely do not think that these people are attacking the chain. This is not an attack that people have found with the Bitcoin chain, and so and they should be allowed to do that because the protocol enables you to do that. But what it really does is it makes you realize, as I have said before, that frankly the only reason you should be using layer one is to jump onto layer two. Now I know that we don't have Omnia running on Minima yet. We have a good idea, and there's models of it out there. But in Bitcoin terms, you shouldn't be using layer one to send money on Bitcoin. Yeah, when you're sending your 50 quid, your 100 pounds, your £1, your 1 penny, you should be using Lightning. And this is exactly what is being shown to us now. The only reason you can make one transaction on layer one, then you're on layer two, then you can do 1,000 transactions, and then you can jump back down to layer one when you want to close the channel or whatever. I mean, this is a function of software. This is a function of how good the systems that we write on top of layer one are, because the truth is that once you're on layer two, you may never need to come back down to layer one. It may be a one-time jump. You may need to just jump up there once, and then you can stay up there, and that's perfect. And I'm going to wait until a bit later because I know Joss was asked a good question about this. And are there ways of jumping onto layer two without going via layer one, which is a very interesting topic that a lot of us look into. But I think this is exactly what is playing out in front of us. And there's nothing wrong with high fees. And frankly, it shows that there is demand for your chain. So if you ask me, it's a good thing. It shows that you're paying for something. It shows that that your money is going towards something. And that is why you shouldn't be using layer one unless you absolutely feel you have to. And you should be jumping onto higher layers and side chains. And this is all popped out of that, one guy coming up with the ordinals, and now these BRC20s, and now, it is fun. He has fundamentally changed the landscape of the Bitcoin ecosystem in about 6 weeks with about, 100 lines of code. And I'm impressed by that. I think that's really exciting, really interesting. And I'm interested in seeing how this plays out, what they come up with next, what's going to happen, how that's going to go. There's talk of censorship, which is unbelievable, but there's talk of, soft forking, they're doing filters. So what they're doing is miners are saying, well, I'm not going to mine those transactions, which is their right. They can put a filter on their miner and they can say, look, when I get those transactions, I'm just going to throw them in the bin. But then all the other miners are like, well, I'll do it and I'll get the juicy fees. Yeah. And so the game theory plays out very well. It's like now they're fighting for less space, and so they're having to pay more than they would do to get onto the chain, because only 10% of miners are saying we're going to add those transactions. But those 10% of the miners are making loads, and so now the miners who said, no, we're going to filter it, are sort of, umming and ahhing and sort of thinking, well, maybe I'll get rid of that filter because he's now making loads more money than me. So it's a sort of self-regulating system. Right. Sorry. So very interesting. It's a really interesting situation occurring, and I'm looking at it quite intensely. Thank you.
Another excellent sermon delivered to us by the inimitable Spartacus. Thank you for that there. So what we'll do now is we'll move on to the AMA segment of today's call. Granvy on Discord gave us the following question. How do the founders of Minima feel about some meme coins, Pepe, for example, have little to no utility, but they have valuations in the billions against Minima that, to Granvy's mind, is game-changing, and yet it is struggling at a few cents? Is it a lack of marketing? What is the issue for the lack of take-up for Minima?
I'm going to go, Hugo, you go, mate.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a very interesting question, and I think it's absolutely right to talk about Pepe for lots of reasons. But I mean, it's a great example of the two very different sides of the crypto world, the crypto market. On the one side of the crypto coin, you have a project that overtly says they're a meme coin with literally, it says it on the website, with no intrinsic value, and the coin is completely useless and for entertainment purposes only. These projects by definition are quick to spin up and also make some people rich overnight, but equally is short-lived, and most get wrecked by buying too late in the cycle. But again, that is something very real. I mean, on the other side of the crypto coin, you have a project like Minima, that's building something foundational and game changing, that will hopefully bring long term utility and value to the space and will drive adoption beyond crypto Twitter into real world mass adoption. And this is much harder and takes a lot longer. It requires integration on a huge scale with businesses that are by definition much more risk averse. But this has always been the road that Minima is been going down. And it's our ambition to create solutions for long-term projects with far-reaching benefits for all. In the short term, the introduction of MiniSwap, as I mentioned, will open up Minima holders to the EVM ecosystem. MiniFarm will also allow, wrapped Minima holders to earn a yield. Our automotive partnerships that I alluded to earlier, and also our enterprise engagements, will give us the opportunity to deliver real-world utility to millions, if not billions, of users and devices. So there's always going to be two sides to the coin. We're very much on one side. I mean, it is always fascinating to look at the other side of the coin, but we aren't going to let that distract us from what we set out to do, what our investors invested in as a result of that. I mean, I think that the two will happily have to coexist, and that's the route that we're going to be taking.
And I'm just going to say, humans. I mean, look at us. You know what I mean? This is a classic example of what I've just said. It's like, what are they? I mean, a coin that really is, people love these things. People love these meme coins. People love this Pepe stuff. They love making money. Yeah, they're like when Moon, when number go up, NGU, all of that. That's all that 99% of crypto is all they care about. That's what they want. And again, there's nothing you can do about that. That's us. That's what humans do. I think it's a very interesting coin. Actually, I think psychologically, I think psychoanalytically, there's a lot going on there. Why is it that when there's a part with two paths ahead of us, and one which is nice, easy, clean, maybe not true answers, and then the other path is like difficult questions that have probably problematic conclusions. They take the nice easy answers. They don't want the problematic one. They don't want the one where you have to. And we see this always and everywhere in everything. And we're not going to change that. As Hugo says, though, I do believe that these are short-term things versus long-term things. I do believe that this is there's going to be another Pepe in 3 months. There's going to be some what happened to Shiba. Wasn't he the last one? There's been 50 of them now, and they'll always be around. And that is more a function of humans than a function of crypto, if you ask me. But yeah, interesting.
Leonid on Discord is asking about Minima blockchain in relation to car charging technology. When should the community expect to hear more about that?
So I mean, we are making really good progress on that. We've now done a successful demo to our enterprise partners. So we're now at the next stage for costing and mapping out the architecture and the roadmap. This effectively is the next stage that will then lead to deployment, which is huge. I mean, this is no longer a proof of concept. This is actually getting into deployment. So we will be hopefully releasing a video describing exactly what we're up to very soon. And then beyond that, obviously we have to wait for our enterprise clients to allow us to talk about this publicly, which I know is frustrating for us and for the community not to be able to hear about it sooner. But again, it goes back to the initial point in many ways, that we're building a stone house on rock solid granite, which takes a lot longer than building a straw house on quicksand. So we are working very hard in the background. We are hopeful to make an announcement of that in the next sort of month or so. But again, we are making genuine progress from demo through to architecting deployment now.
So as Hugo says, there's some things we can say, some things we can't, but we have done a POC and they love the POC, and now we're chatting about boring money things. But what's interesting about it is that the M2M economy, the machine to machine economy, which is a very different one to the people to people, the peer to peer, the one that we're doing with you lot. Yeah, the cars are different. And Minima sort of fits in really nicely with the cars because it runs in full on the car. We've got it running on cars. We've got it in the head units. We've got, car engineers who've got that running. And it means that the car becomes an independent sort of unit. It means that the cars sort of can somehow chat to each other, using a value layer. It means that the wall units that give them the electricity are sort of, you pay the wall unit. It's not like you're sending it to it's not like Ringo. It's not like, phone and pay. It's not like all the car applications we have for that. This is different. I'm actually paying the wall unit. Yeah, the car's got the money, the cash in its pocket, and it gives the wall unit the cash, and the wall unit gives it the electricity. And Minima's perfect for this, because you need unfortunately you couldn't do it with Ethereum, and you wouldn't do it on with Bitcoin because of the because it doesn't have the tokenization, and Ethereum is too big. And so Minima sort of fits that nice sweet spot where it's like, oh yeah, you can run the whole thing on the car, which makes it very resilient. This is why these are the words that we use when we speak to them, which they like, because it means that there's no danger of a single server going down somewhere in the cloud and suddenly shutting off 100,000 wall units. Yeah, they want a system that is robust. They want a system that is resilient. They want a system where it runs and works. And frankly, they can look and they can, tinker and all of this, but it just operates outside of whatever it is that they're doing. And that's very exciting for them. So, and when the machine to machine industry kicks in, I mean, on this planet, but there's a lot more machines, especially now. I mean, let's not even go into the whole chat GPT stuff and all that, but there's 100 times more IoT devices, car devices, than there are of people. And so it's actually a really important avenue for us to try and get them to use Minima, because if the machines start going, then that is a game changer for Minima, because that will increase adoption by orders of magnitude more than we could ever hope to get, even if every single person on the planet installed it on their phone. So those are the sort of numbers we're talking about. I mean, even in, not that I can say, but even in these simple conversations we're having at the moment, the numbers are staggering in terms of devices that are going to hopefully, run this. And yeah, it's going very positively. And I, hope, as Hugo says, hopefully we'll have something to say in the next couple of months. Thank you.
It's a very exciting area. I'm excited at the prospect of having my car be a node, just moving around, contributing to the network.
Very soon, Luke.
Absolutely. Alex_NuttyCon on Twitter has a question about the listing of Native Minima. He's wondering if we have a concrete listing date yet for exchanges.
So for Native Minima, obviously, as we've sort of explained in the past, what we need to do for that is to have an integration with Rosetta, which is the middleware that connects a decentralized network to the centralized exchanges. And also this will also be useful for custodians as well. This is on our roadmap, and the target is by the end of the year to have that integrated. So that is when we will be in parallel, we'll be working with the exchanges to integrate, and then if we can then get exchange listings from then, basically.
I mean, as Hugo's correct, if you want to go for the bigger, this is Binance, this is Wobi, this is Coinbase, this is, the big custodians, they use Rosetta. There is nothing to stop a little exchange from integrating Minima. If they wanted to integrate it and they, and they were pretty shifty, and they knew what they were doing, they could do it. I'm sorry to bore you again, but the real technical reason that this is slightly problematic is that Minima is geared for you. Minima is geared for a single player experience. Yeah, that's how the MMR database works. That's how the whole system is run in such a tight, small amount of data. And sacrifices have had to be made in that regard so that it's not really possible currently with my phone to have 10,000 people or, Coinbase, 100 million, 100 million users. Just isn't going to work off a single minimum node. And they don't want to run 100 million minimum nodes. They want to run one mega node. And we just don't have the code for that. So we need to get some devs in to slightly, obviously we can't change the way Minima works, but there's definitely different implementations of the protocol that would allow you to do those things. There's my simple version of it is called Mega MMR, which is in the code base and publicly at the moment in GitHub. But that's really what's stopping it from the big exchanges. But if a small exchange wanted to have a go with it, there's nothing to stop them doing it. Maybe writing a few emails to some of these exchanges. We're aiming for the big boys because they're like 90% of the market. But I sort of, I'm more up for the little exchanges going for it actually, and starting from the grassroots and then working up to the big tree trunks myself. But yeah, need a couple of good devs, frankly, to get that done. But once we've got them, then it's there's nothing to stop us doing it.
That would also be an interesting opportunity for a smaller exchange.
I agree. Yeah.
Advantage and all that. Next question is from Discord. It's from DM, who I can see in the audience. So thank you for your question, DM. He is asking how much was raised in the private and public sales in the end, and what are the current balances in the Minima treasury?
So we raised $11 million via SAFT agreements with private investors over the 4 years in the build up to the pre-sale. And then we raised $2.5 million in our pre-sale. And we're being careful and mindful with our spending, which means we have runway for a further 7 months. In parallel, we're working very hard to raise further capital. These things obviously take time, but we hope to make an announcement about this towards the end of June, early July. And our enterprise partnerships obviously are key to those conversations, because they are what's going to prove to investors that there is a business model in there, a revenue generating model, and something where Minima is going to get to sort of its offering, which is utility. And that's where revenue comes through. So we're working very hard on that. In fact, that is sort of my main focus, to be honest, because obviously capital is what we need to get us to the next stages.
Yeah.
Thanks for that one there, Hugo. So the next question comes from Twitter, Ray Kennel NE. Probably a little of a tongue-in-cheek question, but I think it's worth asking anyway. They said, what do you think about the price? This project is unfortunately a rug pull. What do we have to say to that?
So, I mean, again, the definition of a rug pull is where a project is hyped to attract investor money only to suddenly shut down or disappear, taking investor assets with them. If that was true, then of course, if this was indeed a rug pull, then I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you still. Paddy wouldn't be here sitting to you at all. We'd be sitting on a beach somewhere, and we'd all be laughing at it. But as you can hear, we're all very much still here. We're working extremely hard on all areas in terms of product development, partnerships, and getting awareness out there. So yeah, I can happily say that and confirm that this is by no means a rug pull.
I mean, what will I say? I'm disappointed for all of you. I'm sorry that the price is where it is, and that you're not all sitting on your own beaches, sipping pina coladas and all of that. For me, the price is not the interesting bit. For me, the price can only come with time. Like it isn't a function of ability. It isn't a function of what does Minima do and how decentralized is it and all of these things. Some people simply will not look at a coin unless it's been around for 5 years, and I kind of agree with them. You've got to show that you've got the metal to go around the block. You've got to show that you have survived long enough to actually be considered a worthy asset for you to put your money into. And as I have said before, when you look at the economy that Minima services, as far as market caps go, I do believe that all of them, other than Bitcoin and Ethereum, are rubbish. As in, none of those are actually what the market cap is, because your market cap should be proportional to the economy that you service. There's obviously other than that, there's the speculative element. Fine. Yeah, because people think that you will be servicing a larger economy in the future. But the truth is that your market cap is a function of, how many people need to use you, do use you, who uses Minima, like what are they using it for? So currently it is purely a speculative game. So currently the speculators are sitting there thinking, well, is it going to service a larger economy? And it's like, well, it's only been around for, we've only been live for 3 months, so, you can't really make a value judgment on that, given that these coins have been out there for, a decade, given that there are coins out there that have, been on. I am sorry that the price is not where I would like it to be. But I have to say, I think, if I'm completely honest, it is probably where it should be. This is the economy that we service. Our user base in comparison to other coins simply isn't large enough. We're not out there. We're not large enough. And until that starts to happen, which I think will only happen with time, then price is just going to have to be where it is. I mean, I do remember buying Ethereum when it was like 10 cents. 13 or 0.00028 or something Bitcoins way back when. And I remember when Solana was like, 15 cents and blah, blah, blah. And 18 months later, fine. Then it had its spike and then off it went to $200. So, price now has no indication, frankly, on where price will be 12 months from now, 24 months from now. And, this is something that is, again, this is something that this is the crypto scene does. Tech isn't. I can't code us out of this. There's no bit of code that I can write which is going to change the price. Because the code that we've already written is amazing, frankly. And so clearly, it's not a function of that. Clearly, there's something else going on, and that unfortunately is outside of our control, and we're just going to have to roll with it.
I think it goes without saying, doesn't it, that if this was a rug pull, we're doing it entirely wrong.
I agree.
But I would, just from the community side, I'd reiterate what's been said. Really, the price isn't where we would want it to be, and we're working incredibly hard to get it moving to where ultimately we would like it to be, and where you would all like it to be. And the announcements made today and others that are coming down the line will deliver, and we believe that we will get to where we would like to be.
Absolutely.
The next question then is from Joshua. You alluded to this one earlier on, Paddy. He said that he saw a tweet recently about why the Lightning Network L2 is scalable if the L1 like Bitcoin is oversaturated, and for accessing the Lightning Network you would need to have an open channel in order to do the transaction. His ultimate question is, how can Minima overcome this situation?
Well, so it's very interesting.
So just to quickly say, I'm very conscious of time. We've got quite a few questions, so please
keep this one short. I will. I'll try. Okay, it is the most interesting question. But anyway, so I saw this one, L2, yeah. And to get onto your layer twos, you need, and that applies to whether you're jumping onto Lightning, whether you're going onto a side chain. When you're moving from your layer one, which is where you've got your money, to somewhere else, you have to do a transaction on layer one. How are you going to do that if it's really expensive? Well, two ways of thinking about that. And one is that, when you're not going to do it, it's too expensive. I need to send $20 and it's going to cost me $20 to go off, to go onto L2. So I'm not going to do it. But that's, the other way of thinking about it is that when you go onto layer two, you can do 1,000 transactions. Yeah. So once you're on layer two, the fee you pay to jump across is divided by 1,000. And then you do 1,000 transactions, because layer two, Lightning is frankly free. Yeah, it's 0.1% of 1 penny if you want to send it. You can send however much you want. This applies to Omnia as well on Minima, and on Lightning. So once you're on Lightning, or once you're on your layer two, This is why I don't like sidechains as a scaling solution, because what I see is that the price of the transactions on Polygon and all these other sidechains are just as high as when you've left Ethereum. So that doesn't really work for me. And that's why Minima chose to go for the Lightning Network UTXO, deterministic model. But jumping onto Lightning requires a layer one transaction. Or does it? And what I mean by that is that Minima uses L2, and that is the second version of Lightning. And what's nice about that is that we are compatible, fully compatible with state chains. And actually, what state chains give you, which is another sort of complicated thing, is the ability to onboard people onto Lightning from Lightning without having to do a layer one transaction. And so, the main issue is that why can't I just buy a Lightning channel? Why do I have to do a layer one transaction? And the issue is that you have to give your private key to someone. And so, why can't I just go onto Lightning and just be on Lightning and never have to touch layer one? And the issue with that is, as I've just said, that you have to give your private keys, because then they're going to be in charge of that channel. Now, state chains already have that. State chains have a way of people transacting where you actually give them the private key. But what's interesting on state chains is that there's a single party that is the second signatory in a 2 of 2 multi-sig, blah, blah, blah. And what that means is that actually you can give someone your private key on a state chain without it being a total disaster. Yeah, because obviously once I've given him the private key, what's to stop him from just taking the money? State chains have a fix for that. And so it's possible to onboard people onto Lightning without having to do a layer one transaction if you have a state chain system. And Minima, I actually wrote one about 6 months ago. It was a proof of concept, which worked. And so, yes, it's going to be possible for people to go onto layer two without even having to do a layer one transaction. And that's going to be very interesting. So, yes, you've got to do one on layer one to get to layer two, but it is possible to get onto layer two directly from layer two, given a bit of funky tech that you can use if you're using Minima's Omnia, or with a bit of work with the Lightning Network as well. So there are solutions. Thank you.
Richard 911118 on Discord. He's asking why support have not responded to the emails he sent in 3 weeks ago. That's probably one more for me. We have an absolute heap, and I mean thousands and thousands of support tickets as a bit of a legacy from the pre-sale to work through. And it was a piece of work that had to be done alongside everything else the community team were working on. But we recognised that was an obvious and clear source of frustration for the community. So what we have done, we have onboarded 3 what we're calling community ninjas, and one of their primary tasks is working through support tickets, and they are making excellent progress, and their onboarding is going very well. So what I would say is, this shouldn't be the case currently that you're waiting that long for a reply. If you have not had a reply yet, please add me as a friend on here, and I will look into that one for you personally. Lewis 5C then is saying he's resyncing from block 0. It's taking forever, and we're only 5 months into Mainnet. The workaround of using his laptop instead of his phone works for a nerd like himself, but it isn't that user friendly. Will there be a way to start resyncing from just a few blocks before whenever someone left off, in a way that doesn't crash phones? Ideally, once we're on IoT devices, is there going to be a way that someone can automatically resync when they have an issue and not even need to have that manual intervention and regularly check themselves? That's probably for you, Paddy.
Yeah, good question. So it's very interesting to see how different phones are dealing with this resync issue. And what I have written recently is called an archive server. And what the archive server, so currently when you're doing your resyncing from the phone, it's actually talking to a normal Minima node. You're talking to a normal Minima node that's started with dash archive, and it gives you all the blocks. It's doing lots of other things. It's running Minima. There's many of you connecting to it. And so actually when you're doing an archive resync, there's probably 500 other people also doing an archive resync at the same time. And that is actually what is causing it to be quite slow. A, it's running Minima, and B, there's a lot of you connecting to it. If you want to, like when I run my archive resync, I've obviously got 7 nodes running on my computer on Docker, and one of them is an archive node. And if I resync from that and I'm the only person that's doing it, it's fast. So I can get through the whole chain from beginning to end in about 4.5 minutes, which is pretty good, frankly. So I think the reason it's slow is because, as I said, there's a lot of you trying to do it off. We're only running 8 nodes, and there's 200,000 of you out there. So it's like, you're all resyncing, and that's what's causing the delay. So the 2 ways of fixing that are: A, we're going to run them as archive servers. An archive server is just a little Java server application that accesses the MySQL data and just does that. It doesn't run Minima. So I did have a test, one of those running in the test group. I'm not quite sure if you're in that group, sorry, mate. But that's much faster already because it's not having to do all the Minima stuff. And the other reason is that loads of you are accessing the same nodes. What would be really nice is if that many more people started to run archive nodes, and that way people could access those. Running your own archive node is really the way to do it. When I zip up the data for the last 5 months, so I do that on a daily basis. I just make an export. I dump the SQL database and I upload it to my Google. It's about 130 megabytes now. So that's 5 months worth of data to resync anybody, because it's got all the data, all the coins. We don't have the transactions, but we do have all the coins and all the POW. Is about 130 megabytes, which is nothing. It's a very small amount of data. And actually distributing that, I'd love to have a little website that just had a daily, nightly backup made that people could just download. You can resync that. You could load that fresh into MySQL in about 30 seconds, and then you could do a resync in 5 minutes. So there are options. As with all the other things we've said today, there's a lot of different tech needs to be written. Minima, we don't have billions of dollars. I don't have 20 devs. Yeah, we've all got stuff that we're doing. I wish we could devote the time that all the different things need to be at the level that they need. So what I will say is that yes, there is a solution. There's nothing intrinsically why it's slow. It's just that you're all accessing, these few nodes, and they're already running Minima. But there are things that can be done, and unfortunately, we just haven't made it easy enough for you, the members of the community, to take that bull by the horns and sort it out. But that's one way. And just to say though, with your thing about resyncing from a given point, that is the restore sync function. So I don't know if you know the functions on Minima. There's restore and there's backup. There's also restore sync. And what restore sync does is that it loads your backup and then only syncs from that point on. So it is entirely possible to do that. So you don't have to resync from zero. If you've got a backup from a month ago, you can restore sync. That's the function that you run on Minima, and that's the function that it does in the phone now, because many of you are going too far back and then doing blah blah blah. So yes, you can do that, and it only resyncs from that point onwards. But maybe we need to make that, again, it's UX. Again, it's trying to make it easier for you lot to use it, etc., etc. And I'm sorry that's taking time, but there are solutions. We just haven't whacked them out yet.
I've got just a tiny Hugo said 10 minutes left, so we'll try and move through these last ones at a canter. Rudolph asks, excellent name by the way, as someone who wants to learn to program out of enthusiasm to be able to build something with MiniDapps, I understood it would be relatively easy. What do you recommend in terms of languages to learn first, or any other tips?
So HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. That is the base layer of the internet. Yes, you've got React, and yes, you've got Ionic, and yes, you've got all these other languages that sit on top of it. But the actual web pages you go to are compiled down into those 3. HTML is very simple. It's just those tags. It's a visual information language, actually. That's all about showing information on a page. CSS is about how you style it, what colors you use, what positions you use, blah, blah, blah. And JS, JavaScript, is the way that you then do funky stuff, like when you write actual code in your HTML page. And that is how you access Minima. So whenever I'm doing a MiniDapp, the first thing I do is I do it all hardcore command line in terminal. What I mean by that is that if you look at the terminal, if you look at the Minima, and you type help, and it gives you that list of 30 functions. That is enough to do everything. Everything that you're going to do on Minima, you're going to do in combinations of those functions. And when you're using the JS library in your MiniDapp, all you're doing is running those functions, getting a JSON back, and then doing some funky stuff with it. So you need to understand HTML, you need to understand CSS, and you need to understand JavaScript. And once you've got those three, all you need to do is understand the send function, understand the token create function. Once you get a bit more hardcore, you can go into transaction creation. Yeah, when you create your own transaction, you put your own inputs and your own outputs, and you do it manually. And then at the end of that, you start writing, Kiss VM scripts. You start writing actual smart contracts that do clever stuff and do interesting things on a blockchain. But yeah, if you wanted to look for stuff to do, those are the languages you need. And then once you know those, yeah, you can go for React and you can go for all these other, libraries. I don't do all of that. There's always a new one. Yeah, that's why I never like these other libraries, because the only ones that ever remain over time are HTML, CSS, and JS. And then all the other ones sort of get superseded by the newest version, and they say, oh, no, that was good, but it's not good anymore. So that's what I would do.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that answer. I'm sure they'll be able to get learning and hit the ground running in no time. Yes, sir, on Discord has asked, how far along is the progress regarding iOS app, and will we be able to run a node on iPhone, iPad?
So I'll take this as well, because I just had a very long chat with Hugo about it, actually. Problem with iPhone isn't a technical one. The problem with iPhone is a sort of is Apple. And the problem with they don't let you do stuff in the background. You can't run a web server on your iPhone. Yeah, you can't run Apache. I mean, forget Apache. You can't run a little Java application that just serves web pages, because iPhone cuts you off. They turn you off. And not only that, they have a strict policy on whether you should be allowed to mine. Yeah, whether you can mine your transactions. They don't, anything that affects iPhone's battery, Apple doesn't let you do. I think that's very bad, frankly, because it's your phone and you're running it. If you want to do it, you should be allowed to, but they actively don't allow that. They proactively don't let you put those applications in the App Store. And the funny thing is that we wrote a version that ran on the iPhone and it worked 2 years ago. But you cannot install an application on the iPhone that doesn't go through the App Store. I find that horrific, frankly. Yeah, I find that an absolute insult. I bought an iPhone, it belongs to me. It doesn't belong I didn't rent it off Apple. I bought that iPhone, it's mine now. And if I want to install an application, then I should be allowed to. But they don't let you do that. You have to go through the App Store, which means you have to jump through all their hoops. And one of their hoops is you're not allowed to do anything in the background. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to be a bit, we're going to have to be clever about this. If we want to get it on the iPhone and we want to get it on iOS, then we're going to have to somehow come up with a system that operates in the foreground with occasional waking up. And so a few of the ideas that I was having are, you have to do the work. Yeah, on the Minima network, you have to do your work. You have to, not a lot of work, but you have to do some work. Otherwise, I kick you off the network. I'm not up for you just leeching. Yeah, you need to do the work. You need to protect your coins. And in our cooperative network, ergo, you are protecting my coins. And so we might come up with a system where you can ask a server to do the work for you, give you the TX Power unit, and then you can post that. We might have to come up with a system which is a hybrid of the two. The M2M machines are all Android. The M2M machines are JVMs. The M2M machines are IoT, and that's a different thing. And that's that's a huge market. iPhone is 17% of the world, and shrinking. Some countries are very big on iPhone. I agree. All the executives and all the CEOs I speak to, they're always using iPhone, so it's always like, but actually, they're not a large they're not a massive area. Not that they're not important. I'm not saying iPhone users aren't important. I'm just saying that we're going to have to, shift. We're going to have to come up with a slight hybrid solution to get you boys to be able to run it. You can run it on your iPhone if you run a cloud version of Minima. So if you run Minima on a computer and then you just access the mini hub, you get full access. You get a full. That's why it's written the way it is. I apologize for the garishness of the mini hub. That's me. We haven't had anybody else write that, and we haven't had somebody write that as a mini DApp that looks, sweet and cool and all of that. So unfortunately, you have to put up with my graphics. But it is possible. I mean, my brother, I've set him up. He's got a Google Cloud node. Yeah, he's got web servers, all that stuff. Not a heavily techie person, but he does have a cloud node. Pays $10 a month for it. I installed Minima on that. He then accesses that by typing in 85.35:9003, types in his MDS password, and boom, he's got it. Works really well. It's actually really smooth on the iPhone display. You know, that 90 hertz refresh, you really notice it, or 120 on the one he's got. And so that's the way today. If you wanted to run Minima on your iPhone, you need to run a version in the cloud and access the Mini Hub. To get it running natively, we're going to have to be a bit shifty and a bit cool. And again, that's going to require some devs.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also, I mean, the other thing obviously is to say that, you know, enterprise clients, of course, require iOS integration. So we'll be working with them to deliver a solution that works for their customers as iOS users as well. And obviously that solution will then feed into the personal usage of iOS devices, iPhones, etc. So yeah, I mean, it was a good conversation and I think we made good progress. So we'll be updating soon on that.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I'm ticking away. A couple of minutes left. So last two questions are quite similar. So I'm gonna do them both at the same time. Dave Ladd and Quanshbeck on Discord. Between them, they are, well, I'll just read it out. I believe this is the main issue with the project as it currently stands. We're all here because we believe it will be a massive success, but it feels a bit like relying too much on word of mouth to spread the message. This feels like the wrong way to go for a couple of reasons. And says, one, by only targeting potential partners, we limit the audience to only those groups we contact. And two, as we know, the pre-sale wasn't the raging success that we'd all hoped for whatever reason, probably the When Lambo crowd. But this means there are plenty of people who are more than happy to talk the project down without really understanding. And then Quanshbeck says he would like to know what kind of broadly work are we going to be doing to advertise the project in Google services, social networks, television, mass media, etc. Hugo.
Oh yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, you know, budget constraints. We have budget constraints until we raise further capital because advertising and PR requires large budgets. So our approach is to be very strategic about when and where we spend our capital on the likes of PR and marketing. And so the key thing really is to make sure that when we do push out to the wider audiences, firstly that we have something to offer these new audiences, so delivering real world utility. I mean, MiniSwap, MiniFarm, and the NFT drop are all part of that, and obviously the enterprise deployments. But you know, the critical thing is that rather than just sort of repeating generic messaging, talking about how great blockchain decentralization is, we want to be going out there with tangible messages about unique offerings that we have for real world solutions, so that we stand out from the crowd. So really it's just being clever about it, picking our moment, and again we're working very hard in the background to create those moments where we can actually have something truly sort of unique and useful to say to people, and then when people arrive having heard those things, then they will actually be able to then interact with Minima in a way that's going to either give them yield or to give them utility, basically. So all of those things are sort of coming together. I mean, it's very valid points, and I totally, you know, I get the frustrations. It's something that is you know, fueling us to work harder to get these out as soon as possible. And we have the team working across all of these partnerships. And again, making our announcement for next week in terms of our NFT drop, the automotive industry, and then our announcements once we've got sort of, you know, further traction with our automotive deployments. You know, that's all going to add to the story, and so we're planning for those to be part of our big story, really.
And sorry, I don't really know much about all that, but what I will say is that in crypto, you're only 24 hours away from spike, lads, gentlemen, you know, ladies. It's only we're one tweet away from whatever it is that people are looking for. So if we keep chipping away, then I have a good feeling that something will happen, and it can happen fast. It's not going to be slow. When it kicks, it'll kick. And, you know, I'll still be here. So I'll see you then.
Wonderful. And that with that brings us to the end of our hour. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I appreciate it's a different day than is normal. You can thank King Charles for that one. We will be back to our ordinary, regular scheduled programming as regards to these leadership AMAs going forward. So I see there's a few questions we couldn't get to. I will reply to you. Good questions, actually. I'll reply to those in the chat directly. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you to Hugo and Paddy for coming along and talking to us all today, and especially thank you to you in the community for your time.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for sticking with us, guys and team.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Support.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, everybody.